Hi everyone, welcome to Lockdown Literacy Webinar 3. We're very glad to hear that some of us at least are going to level 2. We really feel for the people who are still at level 4. But before we start, just a little bit of an update in terms of levels. Because there's so much uncertainty at the moment, and because of course Auckland is staying at level 4, what we've done is we've decided to extend the free licenses until the end of term 4. You should have had notification of that. You don't need to do anything from your end. It will have happened automatically for you. So hopefully that will help a little bit. Okay, so coming on to what we're going to be doing today. As before, you're very welcome to send questions in. We will also be touching on questions that we've received in the meantime between webinars. And if I don't get a chance to answer your questions during the webinar, we will be posting that question and answer page up on our support site and sending you the link to it, as we have done before. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen with you, and what we're going to do is look at one of the first queries. Now, there are several things we're going to be covering today. One of them is a question related to managing your classes in a remote teaching situation. We're also going to look at some of the issues involved in changing from teaching remotely to teaching in class again, because of course some of you are going to be in that situation. There are several queries that refer to some of the extremes, the new entrant teaching or more advanced teaching, which we'll cover as we go through. And at the end of that, the last thing we're going to cover is several queries in terms of how you can create content to support your teaching. Now, we touched on that before, but there are actually quite a few complexities and quite a few things that we see going wrong. So I'm going to finish off by going in a little bit more detail into that, and it'll cover creating class subject content, and also some of the things that you can do in terms of customizing Steps Web to support your school in general. So anyway, let's launch in on here. So first of all, we're going to look at managed classes and cover one of the first queries that came up. Now, you'll know that we had a demo class before, and as I explained, all of these are made up students. But one of the queries that came through, it relates to how we actually customize our teaching to those students. Now, to a certain extent, this is already done for you. So one of the things that you'll be familiar with is the class progression report, which shows you whereabouts those students are actually on the course itself. And one of the huge advantages of Steps Web is it enables you to have, say, 30 learners in your class working perfectly happily at 30 different levels. No more, here's your spelling list, I'm going to test you on Friday. Each learner is working at their own individual pace. So that gives you a progression that they can follow automatically. But one of the questions was, if I want to be able to provide extra reinforcement to some of that class, but not to others, how do I then do it? And so what I'm going to do is explain how we would tackle that issue. Now, students can be in any number of classes or groups. So let's imagine that this is my class of, say, 30 learners, whatever it is, and I have a group of extension learners who need to be challenged particularly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a class for that. So I'll call it my demo class extension. And what I'll do is I'll then pick out a few learners who are going to be into that class. Now I'm just doing this at random, of course, because these are all made up students. But here we go. There's my class, or there's my group rather within the class. And I've saved that class. Now, as we mentioned before, what I can then do so that I can easily find that group, if I click on the star here, that comes up under my favorites. So I now have an extension group, and I'm going to add a group of learners who need more support and choose various learners, hopefully not the same ones. Here we go, we'll just choose 4 at random. There we go. And again, I can click on here, and now I can see my extension, my class support ones. Now, bear in mind that we can be having a look at our overall class, and one of the things that we might have done to identify those learners is look at their accuracy statistics. Any students who had low accuracy will appear under here. Any students with low usage under here. So let's imagine that I had, say, 3 or 4 learners under the low accuracy column, and I knew they were struggling. Those might have been the ones that I put into that support class. So what we'll now do is we'll have a look at how we might provide extra reinforcement for the course for our support learners. And I'm going to go into Add Assigned Work and show you a section that I think you might find quite handy. We're going to click on Set Specific Word List. And what you may have come across is there's a bank under Word List called Course Reinforcement. And this was designed for exactly that situation. Let's say you've got a learner on, say, level B, and you know that that learner is one of those learners who needs a considerable amount of extra reinforcement. What we can now then do is we can choose lists from this section which are going to directly reinforce the level that they're currently on. Now, each list has got a specific purpose, and some lists will have different activities. So, for example, our in word family, they can be reading and spelling those. You might see here that there are maths words. At this level, we wouldn't be expecting those learners to actually spell those words, but what you'd find if you went into that activity is that in reality, all they're going to be asked with that list is to just simply recognize words and understand what they mean. So the activities are pre-selected to be appropriate for each word list. So just going back over there, for each level from A through to level 4, there's a complete bank of reinforcement lists which are directly relevant to those learners. You could, of course, have a learner who's currently on level B, and there's no reason why you can't set some of the level C lists, again, for extra reinforcement. Now, I wasn't going to go through the process of setting those lists just at the moment, because I'm going to show you that in a wee while. What we'll do, though, is we'll just go back to our class list. And this time, if we look at our extension class, we'll assign them some work. Let's go to assigned work again here, set specific word lists. And this time what I'm looking for is word lists that are going to extend them beyond what the course is currently doing. And we have had an issue well, not an issue, but a query that's come up about some of the more advanced learners being put onto level 4 of the course. Now, I need to explain a little bit of the history behind this now, because the course was originally designed to be alongside the actual workbooks and was designed for your remedial learners. And we did have the question a wee while ago, is this program suitable for high school learners? And yes, it absolutely is. I should probably have given a little bit more clarification about that, in that the course may well be at too low a level for your non-remedial older learners in a high school situation. And I'm talking here about learners who come out with a spelling age of, say, 13, 14, 15 and above. So one of the things we've recommended is that you can manually adjust the level of the course. So instead of leaving them on level 4, you could put them onto level 5, where there is a more advanced selection of vocabulary learning modules. But the other thing that you can do with those learners is tap into some of the higher level word study materials on the word list section. So I'm going to show you some of the options here. So if we go into spelling patterns and rules and the word study section, what you can see here is we have a list of prefixes, and just tap into a few of these and you can see that these are quite advanced word collections, quite suitable for your higher level learners for word study. And so we might actually allocate this one to our group, use word list. This is just a bit of recapping. I'll give them, say, a week to finish that. I'll give it to all of the students in that group. I might select activities. Now, this is quite relevant in terms of choosing activities which are relevant to that literacy level. You'll find that these lists that we've already created, each one of these activities has already been pre-selected. I could delete any particular ones if I wanted to. But I'm going to show you when we come to creating materials for yourself, I'm going to show you how to actually select the correct activities for that particular level. So we will come back to that issue. So I'm going to now go to create. And now my extension class have got a prefixes list. We're going to allocate them another little bit of work as well, just so I can show you some of the other more advanced content that's on here. Oh, by the way, I meant to open this one, which is root words. So that's your word study section, and that was under spelling patterns and rules. The other thing which can be very handy with higher level learners is the homophones list. Now, homophones, as you know, words that sound the same but are easily confused. These are your lower level ones, but there are 40 lists in this section. So if we, for example, go to some of the higher levels up here, you can see that these are materials that would challenge probably some of your advanced learners. So any one of those can be then set as assigned work. So that's basically how we would cope with having groups with different levels within the same class. Now, the other thing we were going to look at is transferring from home to a classroom situation. Some of you will be new to using StepsWeb with whole classes or new to StepsWeb entirely. And so I wanted to cover a couple of the aspects that are relevant to people who are using StepsWeb as a whole class activity, as a whole class resource. One of the issues is that you can, as we say, monitor the progress of, say, 30 learners within a class with every single learner working at the same level. The other thing which helps in terms of the inclusivity aspect is that your struggling learners are not immediately obvious to other learners. They will be working at their own much lower level of the course probably. They may well be using the workbooks or more of the printable reinforcement, but they will be working along the same progression. It also means that you no longer have the, here's your spelling list, I'm going to test you on Friday. And the issue with that, obviously, is the huge range of abilities within the class, but also, of course, the time element in terms of busy teachers. This way, you can tell their accuracy and their progress for every single learner without formal testing. So going on to some of the reports here, I've got a slightly better one to show you here. You would be able to see exactly where each learner is, but you will also be able, on the course, but you will also be able to create materials that are specific to your subject matter. And as I say, we're going to go into that in a wee while. While we're on the support side though, I'll show you one of the sections here, which is a little bit of information for using StepsWeb as a whole class resource. Because basically the course progression can be your literacy progression throughout the school. It is not only the phonic patterns, it's not only the spelling aspects, it's actually teaching the core skills and knowledge needed for both reading and spelling, with quite a strong emphasis on vocabulary. Now, I'm just going to glance up here and see if any questions have come through. No, nothing so far. Okay, so that gives you an idea as to where you can get some reference material in terms of using StepsWeb as a whole class resource. And so one of the things that we would encourage you to be thinking along the lines of is, as your learners come back into class, they can continue with exactly the process you've started them off on working from home. They can continue at that level of the course. One of the things that you're going to find easier is being able to allocate them additional activities. Now, to explain what I mean by that, let me just come on to my other page. Here we go. This is my demo learner here. And we've covered how to monitor them on the course. We've covered how to assign word lists, but one of the things that at the moment you cannot assign is the supporting activities and games. And so when these learners come back into class after learning remotely, you don't need to worry too much about their overall progression, but you have got other options in terms of setting them additional work from these sections. So I was just going to give you a quick run through what some of them are. Letters and sounds, for example, reversals. If you've been monitoring the logs for your students, it's actually quite easy to pick up those learners who've got, say, BD confusion. And there are a number of different levels that you can allocate here. So here, very, very simple little activity. Now, at the moment, you cannot assign these activities in the same way that you do a word list. But one of the things I wanted to do in this webinar was let you know that there are actually some major changes coming up. And one of them is that you will, in the not too distant future, and I'm very wary about giving exact dates for obvious reasons, one of the things you'll be able to do is you'll actually be able to assign these activities in the same way that you assign a word list. And that will, of course, make things a lot easier in terms of lockdown situations. So a lot of these are focusing on your phonological aspects. So, for example, here,
bib, bun, bed, cop.
we're listening for the word, we're listening for the medial vowel sound and clicking on the correct column. So I'm just doing a very, very quick dip through here. Things like useful stuff. One of the things which is handy for your younger learners is literally sequencing the days of the week. So all of these activities would be available once they're in the classroom with you to actually put them onto. And under that section on the support side, you'll also find some guidelines for class teachers. And that will actually give some ideas in terms of using Steps Web as part of a literacy workstation approach, where you may be working hands-on with one particular group, or your teacher aide may be working hands-on with one particular group and going through some of these activities which need to be specified within the class, and others might be working semi-independently on the coursework or on some of the associated printable resources. So basically your progression is going to carry on from what they were doing remotely, but you then have the options of setting additional activities here. Now, moving on to new entrants, and that was a query that has come up. Several of our schools have made the comment that they provide Steps Web for their older students, and what's actually happened is that some of their younger brothers and sisters, actually in the new entrant area of the school, have seen their siblings working on Steps Web and wanted to join in. And there are a couple of points here. Some of these activities that we've just been zipping into, particularly things like the game activities, rhyming, for example.
Shall. Pin.
Some of those will be suitable for your younger learners. We've got things like initial sounds.
Arrow.
But in many cases, what we do is we warn people a little bit about using the course without a huge amount of supervision. Now, the course does start at a very, very low level, and some of your new entrants will be capable of tackling those activities at this level. Some of them would be able to tackle these but not move very quickly through the course, and that's absolutely fine. The big danger, though, is that those very young learners may move too quickly through this. And what I wanted to explain is the fact that the course was actually designed really for learners who are slightly older, probably 6 to 6.5. Those learners who are reasonably confident with their letter sounds, who have got to the stage of being able to decode at least most CVC words and are recognizing a couple of high frequency words. So if your new entrants are accessing Steps Web, there's no reason at all why they shouldn't have a go at some of these lists. But as I say, the danger is that they go too fast through this progression. What might be a better option for them is encourage parents to tap into some of the additional activities, and also to set some of the simpler word lists from here. For example, we have the essential spelling lists. And just from the point of view of high frequency vocabulary, most younger learners could have a go at that. It's not developing their phonic knowledge, but you could supplement that by tapping into some of the word patterns, CVC words, and so on. So these ones should be decodable once a learner is reasonably confident with their phonic patterns. So I just wanted to make that point about the course option being not actually designed for that very young age group. However, I was saying before that we've got some developments in the pipeline, and this is actually one of them. We are currently working on a foundation level course, which actually goes from the very, very beginnings of learning your letter sounds, literally explicitly teaches each letter in turn, builds your phonological awareness and phonic knowledge in a very, very structured way. And that is designed for your new entrant learners, 4, 5-year-olds, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. And that will be coming out, or the beginnings of that will be coming out later this year. Right, we're whizzing through this quite quickly, and there are no questions so far. I'm not sure whether that's a good sign or not. I'm sure several will deluge me all in one go, going by experience. Before we move on to creating your content, I would just also like to make the point about the course, which is that, as I say, it was not designed for your older non-remedial learners. The level 5 and 6 B lists are quite advanced vocabulary learning lists, as you can see. And so if your learner has been placed on the beginning of level B, which is the standard placement for your higher level learners once they've done the spelling test, and this is purely because it was designed as a remedial resource, you can manually change their level to level 5. And they will then be going through slightly more advanced phonic patterns, but quite a lot of in-depth vocabulary learning. I don't know whether we want a reminder as to how to change a learner's position. If anybody would like me to go through that, please ask us a quick question and I'll go into that. But, oh, there's one coming through here. Right, the question here is a little bit involved. If you have assigned work to only one student and back at school want to include them in a class group with the same assignments for everyone, how does that happen? Or does the individual assignment stay as such and any further assignments for everyone? Actually, yes, that is the case. The assigned work that has been set for them so far as an individual, you can delete it if you want to and reset the classwork, but probably for that piece of work, it's probably easier to leave that as a single individual piece of work and just from that point onwards, assign them work as part of that group. Hopefully that answers that query. Okay, what we're going to do is go back to my teacher login now. And we're going to have a look at creating content to support subject learning. And as I say, this is something which in theory is easy to do, but there are several pitfalls that we've noticed people struggling with in the past. So to do this, we're going to go into custom word lists. Now, what I've done is I've started to create a custom word list based on COVID-19, that being a fairly topical issue at the moment. But bear in mind that this list could be any subject under the sun. This could be a science list. The principles obviously are exactly the same. So what I've done so far is I've put some words in here and I've recorded the sentences. I've imported pictures and I've left several to add to this so that I can show you that process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to talk us through this process and the things you need to be aware of in terms of making this work effectively for your learners. I'm going to click on Edit Word List, and you can see here, if I click on these words, that what I've done is I've added pictures. Now, these are all pictures that are basically from Google. And it's very, very easy to assign, to choose pictures from Google. So what I've done here is for each one of these words, I've chosen a sentence and recorded it, and a definition and recorded it. Couple of points here. The sentence has got to have the word in it in exactly the same form. So lockdown here. But don't fall into the trap of making your sentence a definition of what the word means. Use the sentence to show how that word is used in the context of a normal sentence. The definition, however, makes sure that this is the explanation of that word, but it doesn't include the word itself. It's amazing the number of times we find that people have created a definition and inadvertently used the word itself. So we're going to look at actually using this activity in just a moment. But first of all, we're going to finish this off by adding a couple more words. And what I wanted to demonstrate was how we actually create this. Just going to move this over so that I can switch this on off and access Google. How we actually go ahead and create or find the pictures that we need. So if I go to Google now, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a picture that goes with one of the next words that I'm going to put in here. Now I was going to put in the word bubble. So we're just going to put this into Google and click on images. Obviously, we get loads and loads of different bubbles, but we're looking for bubble in a particular context here. And here we go. This explains exactly what we need. So all I'm going to do is save this image, call it bubble, and we'll come back to that in a moment. The next word we were going to find while we're here is contact tracing. Right, images, let's see what we can find for contact tracing. There's a reasonable choice here. So there we go. What about this one? So we'll save this one. Hang on, I've already got it on there. I forgot I'd already chosen that one. Okay, so we'll leave that. That shows you how you can actually go ahead and find those pictures in the first place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use those in the context of putting a word in. So we're going to put our word bubble in. This time we're going to actually record it. So again, my sentence needs to be a word where the bubble is used in the context of the sentence. Now I've chosen one here. People need stay. How about that one? So we click on save. We're going to record it. Now, it presents you with the sentence broken into chunks because of the close exercises that are involved with the activities. So all you need to do is record the chunk that's shown to you. So let's go here. People need to stay within their bubble. Make sure that what you're doing is you're clicking record and saying the word straight away and then clicking stop straight away, because otherwise what you're going to do is record your pauses. And then we'll finish the last bit. To stop infection spreading. Okay, it's just processing that. We're going to add a definition. Now, we don't need to record this one, but we're going to do it because that means that if a learner is having difficulty reading the sentence, they can play it to themselves. So here we go. A small group of people, such as a family, who live together and keep themselves separate from other people. Okay, and I'm just going to add the last word very, very quickly. We'll put contact tracing in. Okay, again, we'll record it quickly. Scanning QR codes and carrying your mobile phone enable electronic contact tracing. And very quickly, we'll add our definition. I won't bother recording that just from a time point of view. But what we didn't do actually is we didn't import those pictures. So we'll go back to Bubble and we'll browse. And this is going to show my downloads folder. Where did we put our Bubble? Here we go. There we go. And contact tracing, again, we'll go back to browse. And okay, so now what we've done is we've created this list. We've got pictures, we've got recorded sentences, we've got definitions. As I said, you don't have to record a definition, you don't even have to add a definition, but one of the things about it is that you do have to record the sentence. If you have not included all of these steps, not every activity will be available. We can check what activities are available by clicking on here. Now, this is where you can be a bit selective in terms of which activities are going to be relevant at this level of literacy. So find a picture. Well, that might be quite a useful activity just in terms of familiarising them with the pictures that they're going to be using. Find the word is going to be here. They hear the word and click on it. Yep. Choose the word. They're going to have to put the word into context. Word flash, probably not so relevant at this level. So we might disable that one. Sentence builder, well, the purpose of this activity, in my mind, would be to familiarise them with the terminology that's being used and make sure they've understood it. Sentence builder is a very, very good activity at a lower level of literacy, teaching sentence syntax. So here, it may well be too complex an exercise. So I'm going to disable it here. Word search, quite handy. Spelling, well, actually, you might even delete this if your purpose was simply teaching the terminology. So let's delete that. That might be an optional one. Label the picture would be handy. Now, drop is one of the ones where they hear the word and they have to literally drop the letters in that word in random order into the right place. It's a very handy activity in the early stages because it teaches an awareness of phonic patterns, but at this level, it's going to be very time consuming and probably over challenging. Spelling quiz, that's where they have to, they're tested on their spelling. Well, let's switch that off as well because we didn't have the previous spelling activity. Visual memory and word grid are both memory activities. We might just opt for one of them. Definitions we definitely want because that's part of the purpose of this particular list. So for this list, and for any list that you've actually created, go through and select the activities which are relevant. In this particular case, some of them are automatically deselected because they don't meet the criteria for those activities. Initial sounds, for example, at this level would be useless, but other ones you may need to be a bit selective with as well. Again, of course, you've got the printables for all of these. You've got the word search with close exercise, and that's going to be, in fact, we'll have a look at that quickly. That's going to be a very useful one in terms of usage of the word. Handwriting, of course, would be irrelevant at this level. Definitions, this would be extremely useful. So the words are given for them. They're simply deciding which definition fits it. Crossword, likewise, would be very useful. Reading practice. Now, this is sometimes quite overlooked. We only included this sentence activity with reading practice at the suggestion of several ESOL teachers. And this is not an activity as such. It's simply a way of practicing reading those sentences in context. For example, if you've got a learner who has difficulty with syntax, one of the preparatory activities might be that they read this through with you, or you read it through in a small group with them taking turns. And so it can be a very, very useful introductory activity in terms of explaining meaning. There's a spelling activity. I'm just going to have a look at that in a moment, and you can create game cards for these as well. What we're going to do is, in a moment, we're actually going to allocate this to a learner and then see how this pans out from the learner's point of view. But just bear with me for a second while I quickly read the question. Would you please show us how to see what a student sees from the management panel? Right, that's a bit of a tricky one, actually. One of the things that we do for schools is we provide you with 1 or 2 additional free logins that you can use as a trial student. Because at the moment, it's not possible to directly see what a student sees from the management screen itself. That actually has got quite a lot of technical complexity as I understand it. So one of the things we recommend is that you create yourself a trial student login. In fact, we might do that now, and use that so that you can go in and practice. So if we added a student here, we could have teacher trial. I think we might leave date of birth off, don't you? Let's try. Now, we've probably got several of these, so I'm going to make it 20. I'm just going to put a generic one, which is not what we'd normally recommend, of course. One of the things, if you're going to do that, switch the spelling test off, unless you want to do it, of course. And the other thing to do is in learning settings, switch off forced progression, default off, disabled. Here we go. Otherwise, you'd be locked into the right or a place on the course, and you wouldn't be able to zip around and see all the different levels. So that's how you would then create your trial student. So if you have a paid account and you want an additional 1 or maybe 2 free logins to be able to do this with, by all means, let us know. Most schools have already got them, but if you haven't, we can certainly arrange that. So what I'm now going to do actually with our other trial student is I'm going to actually allocate that work to him. So let's go into my trial student here, and we're going to assign him that work. Add assigned work, set specific word list. We'll choose that list that we've just been creating, which is under our demo school word lists. COVID-19, COVID list. I don't need in this case to, I'm not going to give him a time. I don't need in this case to select activities because we've already selected those when we created it. I'm going to make sure he's getting a silver medal, create. Now I'm going to log in as that student. Just bear with me a second. And have we got, here we go. And I'll show you the activities themselves. So here we go. Right, under assigned work, this is our COVID-19 activities list. And this now shows you the activities which are available for that learner. So alert level, right. QR code. We won't complete activities, needless to say. Lockdown. This is just word recognition, of course. Choose the word. Word search. Fairly self-explanatory. The most useful one for this one, of course, would be definitions. So this is where recording this is helpful. A controlled environment where people are not allowed to mix with others for a certain amount of time. This ensures that they are free from infection. Okay. Now, one of the things that is also useful, and let's go back to my management screen here, we go. One of the things which is also useful is actually customizing your lists for your school to directly reinforce knowledge about your school. So again, as a demonstration, and this is probably the last bit we'll touch on before we finish, unless other questions come through, is I've just done a completely spoof one for a made-up school, where what I've done is I've actually put in specific information that would be useful for somebody new, a child new to the school. So for example, these are the teachers at our school. You can import your own photographs, of course. This is the principal. The deputy principal. We introduce people with their names so that children can get to know who people are within the school. And so it could show children where to go for various things. You could explain rules or procedures. So for lunch, for example, you can eat your lunch in the playground. So again, the relevant thing would be to check activities. Find the picture would be relevant, find the word would be relevant, choose the word. Word flash, probably not, because this is, the literacy development aspect is not our focus here. Sentence builder, I would say, definitely isn't. Word search, fine. Spelling, I would say no, because if this was, for example, a new entrant, there's no way they would be able to spell those words. All we're wanting them to do is learn a bit about the school. Label the picture would probably be fine. Drop, definitely not. Word grid, no. Definitions, yes. And again, because we've recorded those definitions, that learner doesn't need to be able to read the definitions independently. And then close. So I hope that's answered some of the queries that have come up in the meantime since our previous webinar. As I say, people wanted a little bit more detail in terms of some of the ins and outs in terms of creating materials. But one of the things that is useful to bear in mind is that you can actually build up complete banks of not only academic vocabulary or subject vocabulary, but words or pieces of information which are relevant to your school, which again you can use again and again. So what I'm going to do, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to leave the webinar open for the next few minutes in case questions come in at the last minute. So feel free to continue sending questions in if you'd like to. And if we can come back to them and actually answer them here and now, we will do. So we'll leave that channel open for about 5-10 minutes so that you can do that. And again, I hope that you found this session useful. We've certainly been very, very heartened by the comments and the feedback we've had from schools, and we do really appreciate your comments. So the only thing to say now is basically say, carry on enjoying Steps Web, I hope. Please feel free to contact us if you need any additional help or support. And we're going to be doing ongoing webinars further down the track, but probably pre-recorded ones. But if there is enough requirement, we're certainly willing to do more live ones. And don't forget that there are the much longer pre-recorded, or recorded rather, theory in terms of literacy development ones that are also on our website, and you'll find those actually, if I show you that very quickly, you'll find those actually on our hang on, go to our homepage, of course. You'll actually find them on our main website. Okay. Right, might leave you, here we go, it's under training, there we go. And that's the literacy development series that hopefully you might find useful as well. So thanks for joining us and keep safe. Goodbye.